Hello, guys. I'm Sai, and welcome to Ace Podcast Nation. On the channel, you will find podcasts, interviews, and content on a various subjects, including mental health, football, serial killers, films, TV, conspiracy theories, wrestling, music, and a whole lot more. All of our shows are available in video format at youtube.com/Ace Podcast Nation. You can also find audio versions at all the usual podcasting platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, TuneIn Radio, and a whole load of other apps and catchers. Today's show is that little bit of different series which we like, where it's unscripted and uncensored. So I've got no run through or questions which have been prepared by myself. It's all provided by other people, and we'll just have some talking points and subjects and questions people have sent in via email, Twitter, or Facebook. They're always a lot of fun. They can go off on wild tangents at any point, and they can also go off the rails, which makes it a good time and usually entertaining. But so joining me today for episode 4 of Unscripted and Uncensored is former MMA fighter, who was Cage Warriors Featherweight Champion of the world for 7 years, fought all over the world, proudly boasts that he was never beaten. And I'm extremely happy to welcome Mr. Danny Batten to the show. Welcome, Danny. How are you doing today, mate?
Hello, Simon, and all those who are listening.
Yes, I'm I was really happy to have you on, mate. To be honest, this big fan of your work. I'm funny enough, like when I was just preparing for the show over the last few days, it's like looking at some of your fights, and one of the things I really like about your kind of fighting style is your leg kicks, because I feel like, I'm no expert on MMA by any means, but I do watch quite a lot, and I feel like sometimes leg kicks can be quite telegraphed by the by the people doing them, and I always appreciate that yours were really, really well hidden, and they were quite sharp, and I do enjoy watching. But so when did you retire?
I think I was 37 or 38, and I'm 45 now, heading on to 46. So I think I had my last fight 2010. I think that's about the.
It's weird how much time flies, isn't it? Because
oh my goodness,
when I think 2010, you think was a couple of years ago, but then in actual fact we're in 2019 now, so
that's right, yeah,
coming on nearly a decade.
And when I had my last fight, I didn't know it was going to be my last fight. It just kind of happened. I was just kind of having a bigger gap in between fights, and weight started going on steadily, and it just different things came into my life, and that become not so important. So it just sort of one of those things that just happened.
Yeah, it's one of the things I was going to ask you about, actually, which was a question from me, was about weight cutting. Because obviously, like you just mentioned there, as people, as you get older, particularly men, as they get to, mid-30s, coming towards 40, it's naturally, you put on a bit of weight, or you find it harder to keep the weight off. How brutal are the weight cuts? Because weight cuts to me, they look brutal and they look dangerous. But
I mean, it's down to the individual. First of all, what weight division he chooses, and how ambitious he wants to be with trying to get down to those weights. For me, it was a very different era that I started my career in. So I started right at the beginning of the millennium. I had my amateur fights in 1999, and then I started my pro career in 2000. And so back then there was no featherweight division, and I was walking around at 64 kilos and fighting in an under 70 kilo bracket, as many of us guys around that weight was. But you could kind of get away with it then, because there was such a big void in technical skill between two people and two clubs. You could kind of get away with being smaller. It wasn't such a big issue as it is now. I mean, look at UFC 1. That was open weight, and a smaller guy won it, right, in Royce Gracie. So size didn't matter back then as much as it would now. I mean, weight cutting was not an issue for me in my early part of the career, but I did begin to gain weight and they brought in lighter weight divisions, and that's when I had to start cutting weight. And to be honest, all the way through my career, I've never done it how they do it today. I did it very, very wrong. And I think it's only because I was so fit that I got away with doing it the way that I did do it, and still pull off some notable victories. Because I just did it totally wrong. Yes. It was not healthy.
When you say wrong, do you mean like you just left it kind of to the last minute where you didn't really focus on your weight, and then when it was time to fight, it was kind of...
Okay. When I say wrong, I did no water load. Now people do water load. I had no really idea about true nutrition for leading up to a fight, and certainly what you eat straight after doing a weight cut and a weigh-in. I didn't have really any knowledge to how to do things. We had an idea, so I was doing it all in a sauna. And when what things made things more complicated, when I did do overseas fights in Las Vegas or over in Japan, I didn't realize that your body retains water in with the flight. So I was landing quite often on the weigh-in day, and weighing in a lot heavier than I thought was going to be. And that made for a really hard weight cut. I was sort of starting my weight cut at 74 kilos on the day of the weigh-in on the morning, and I was cutting all the way down to 65 kilos.
Such a lot,
a test of character, because I think it works out around about 1 kilo an hour doing it in the sauna. It was not a pleasurable experience.
Can't be healthy for the human body, can it? Do you know what I mean?
I don't think I would have been cleared to fight doing it the way that I did it. I mean, I passed out numerous times making some of my weight cuts, and there's just no way they would have let me fight if they knew that kind of thing was going on.
Yeah, I think they're a bit more tight on the regulations surrounding the weight cutting now. Like you've seen a few fighters get pulled in the UFC recently. Yeah, where they're having problems. Obviously, there's that sort of infamous video with Cyborg, Chris Cyborg, the female one, where she's cutting. It's distressing seeing someone like that upset and that uncomfortable. And obviously, there was a Chinese, I think it was a Chinese fighter who died in 2015. And I hear like some of the podcasts that I listen to, they kind of talk about it a lot. And they kind of saying they think it's only a matter of time before there's something goes badly wrong with it, because fighters are cutting so much weight in such a short amount of time. Mm-hmm. But it's almost like it's part and parcel of the game as well, isn't it? Because I think fighters want that advantage, don't they, of being big in their in a weight division, so they might fight lower down rather than
I think we're just beginning to see perhaps the end of that trend where fighters are feeling like they have to have that extra kilo or two over someone. I think they're realizing the deficit of your cardio if you get that weight cut slightly wrong and you have to push yourself that little bit too hard. It's really hard to strategize, especially for title fights, which are potentially 5-minute rounds. I mean, it's a long duration of rounds to stay sharp, stay focused, and hold your body together. And the cardio aspects and the muscular endurance aspects, it becomes quite hard if you've had a difficult weight cut. And then, of course, you've got the longevity of your career. It can't be doing yourself good to have a long career having hard weight cuts all the time. So I think it's something that is not quite as fashionable as it was at one point.
Yeah.
But sometimes I wondered why it was ever needed. I mean, the sport's difficult enough in prep without adding all this weight cut palaver with it as well. I think it would be good if you did perhaps an on the day weigh-in, because they've just made it even more complicated, but potentially safer in that they're weighing people now leading up to fights, aren't they? And they're not allowing you to weigh in and gain too much weight.
So of course, for people who don't perhaps are not familiar with the sort of format of it, when a fighter weighs in for the fight, they weigh in, but then they can take in as much as fluids and food as they want between the weigh-in and the fight. Is that right? Yeah.
I mean, we had this with Tom Mearns. He fought on Bellator, and he's someone who walks around. He's a pretty big guy. He's not too tall. He's about 5'8", but a really thick set, solid individual. who'll walk around about 80 kgs, and and he'll steadily and cut his way down. And he's a pretty tough character, so he can withstand those really hard weight cuts. But consequently, he can put on a lot of weight, and he did get flagged up, and he did get warned that in future Bellators, this could show up as a penalty. They're going to start getting stricter with it. So he actually gained so much weight that it flagged up. So I think it is a good idea. But it just begs the question: should we have any kind of weight cutting at all, and actually find out who is their best at the actual weight that we walk around at? But I don't know whether that will really ever happen. I think the weigh-in is kind of it's become a spectacle in itself, hasn't it? You think about the day before weigh-in, it's a big thing. You have to stand off, you have a little speech with the guys, and so I don't think it'll be taken away anytime soon because of that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if there was some way to get guys just to fight at their kind of natural weight, where they maybe just cut in like a pound or two just to be within the limits for their weight class, but encouraging more fighters to fight just at their general natural weight would be obviously good and healthier. But like you say, it's better than it was, I think, is the main thing.
Yeah, I mean, people are educated now, aren't they, with their weight cuts? So like I say, people are water loading. They're doing things to protect themselves from any damage. They know how to prep their bodies for that weight cut. So it's there's still a lot of weight cutting going on in the sport. I know because all the fighters that I'm coaching, they all do their weight cut, but they're doing it as a healthiest way as possible. So for that aspect, that kind of pleases me.
So when you were fighting, would you have had things like a nutritionist and all that type of stuff to help with the weight cuts? Was it generally down to you?
Yeah, not really. I mean, it was very, very difficult for me personally when I had my career. I was a young parent of two kids, and a bit old-fashioned, so I never wanted their mum to work. So she would be a stay-at-home mum. So I'd be working my 60-hour-week job as a postman, and being a postman was kind of good for my career in that I could finish early. You'd get up really early, but you'd finish early, and I could do extra training in the afternoon as well as the evening. But yeah, it made preparations for fights and for cutting weight really, really difficult. I was trying to be a dad as well as a partner, and trying to be this single earner. It was not an easy thing, and so even though I knew perhaps how to eat a little bit better than I should, just sometimes the money wasn't there or the time to prep these meals. It was just not like how it can be potentially today.
Yeah, I suppose in some ways you I wouldn't say you missed the MMA boom, but compared to now, you kind of did, where all the fighters have got like these big teams of nutritionists and coaches and everyone kind of doing, helping them do every aspect of everything.
Yeah.
But you didn't do bad for yourself, let's be fair.
No. I did all right. Don't get me wrong. And, I was good in my era. And, had I be the same me today, I would have obviously had better coaching because we've got so many of the Brazilians that have come over. We got a little bit more access to the wrestling than we did back in my day, and we've really struggled with any kind of true wrestling knowledge in my time. So as a personality and having a healthy body that I was born with, I think I always would have achieved the same for the other people who achieved back then. But as my level was then, I mean, you've got amateurs now that probably would have beaten a lot of the professionals that were back in my time. But it doesn't take away the fact that everyone who achieved back then weren't achieving the same sort of thing as people are achieving today, because we just had what we had. It's an evolution, right? We didn't have access to the knowledge to weight cut, so we was all in the same pool with that. we was all trying to get access to Brazilians and trying to, improvise with our wrestling. And, we all had very striking backgrounds, but, the sport's evolving naturally, right?
Yeah, and I think even if you watch, like some say, if you watch, I like to watch like the old UFCs, like the very early ones on like UFC Fight Pass and that, and like even like the top guys then in the UFC compared to now, like all the fighters now are more rounded in everything, aren't they? They train in all aspects, whereas in the very early days of the UFC, it was kind of like you had guys who were just Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or just karate or wrestling or whatever.
I loved it. I loved it when it was like that because it was questions no one really knew the answers to. So it was a really good time. I mean, I just loved it. Seeing a judo guy going up against a wrestler, or totally opposite spectrums, a pure striker up against a pure grappler. I mean, we all wondered who was going to win. I mean, we know the answer now, but of course, this sport was always destined to evolve. And even when it evolved where people were striking wrestling and doing their ground well, and you had your complete fighters, the strategy was to not be nowhere near the fence. But now when you get taken down, people are butt scooping to the fence because they use the fence to get up, where it's always considered really a bad thing in the early time. But as strategies as well as techniques evolved, it's now a good thing to be up against the fence if you're taken down. It assists you to get back up again.
Yeah, I suppose just like your ability and knowledge evolves, tactics evolve as well, don't they?
Absolutely.
In all aspects of it. I'll never forget the first time I watched. I think it must have been like UFC 1, where you have Royce Gracie versus that big, huge dude. I can't remember his name.
The sumo guy.
Yeah. And aesthetically, as you look at it, you're thinking, wow, the big guy's gonna just rip him to pieces.
Okay, yeah.
And Gracie just he just destroys him in not very much time. I'll never forget the first time I watched it. It's just that aesthetic of seeing them in the cage and seeing that big, huge guy. There was something. I don't know what the word is. There's just something novel or like just something completely unique because of the size difference at that time. Now, obviously, I do think that, as you say, we use the word again, as it evolved and you have weight classes, I do think that's better in terms of quality of fight and fairness and things like that. But there is something just a bit different, wasn't there, when you had the open weight and you could just have any size guy versus any size guy.
Yeah. I mean, it was just so intriguing to watch, wasn't it? Yeah, and I suppose a lot of us deep down were probably rooting for the small guy, right?
Yeah, especially because I'm small.
Yeah. It was a really great time. I mean, it's a time that you're never going to get again because once you've got evolution as far as we've got now, it's never going to go back that way, right? You're not going to have those type of fights. I mean, you're always going to have your slightly better strikers and slightly better grapplers, but you've got the weight divisions now. Everyone's pretty much well-rounded, and I think now a lot of the way you prep for a certain individual fighter and your camp's ability to strategize is what's giving people the edge now.
Yeah, so it really interests me actually the kind of coaching and the camp side of it because I almost think if you've got the best coaches and camp and training partners, is that more beneficial than being naturally gifted at certain aspects? Well, I can't decide what I think as a fan would be more beneficial.
Yeah, I mean, if we talk about trying to get a guy to become like a UFC world champion and really establish that he's number one, you kind of have to get all these things to line up with so many factors. He has to be athletically gifted. He has to have a really strong mindset. He has to be intelligent. You can't go in there, and not be a smart guy, a smart individual. You've got to be kind of switched on. You've got to have a good camp, good coaching, good nutrition, there's so many things that are line up to make a true success of someone now. So yeah, I mean, you're always at a certain level going to have someone who's really, really physical who can outmatch a technical guy. And indeed, when I teach and coach people, I always say power and athleticism will always outdo a singular technique. But techniques chained together in a strategy will potentially outdo the explosive and powerful individual. But if that powerful and athletic individual, if he's more so than you and he's smart and educated and got a good camp, well, then you're going to be in trouble, right? That's the kind of person that's going to stand victorious today.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've mentioned a couple of times now about you've got your own academy or whatever. It's academy, and you're doing coaching. So I assume you spend the majority of your time doing that.
Yes.
Is that just training people, or tell me a bit about that?
Okay, so the academy is geared to doing a lot of things for the community that a lot of people don't probably realise. I probably see BSA Academy and associate us with just being a fighters gym, although being a fighters gym is a big part of what puts us out there regards attention coming our way. In our local community, we do a lot of things for troubled kids, kids that have been expelled from school or troublesome in schools. We get them together and we do them a little training program, which Jordan is involved with, and a lady that we got there as a coach, Claire Riley. They're quite regular in alternating the coaching experience for those kids. We got free classes. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for kids is for free. For judo's for free. We got wrestling classes. We do a lot of free stuff. We got a free women's self-defense class. So we are geared towards helping our local town, really heavily. But the I don't want to say exciting side, because that's exciting in itself to know you're helping your own community. But the part that gets a lot of the attention that you will all know about is obviously the fight career that we're making out of all the fighters. But we've got a fantastic gym facility there as well. We're just really, really lucky. It's a really big place. It's close to 50,000 square feet. It's got a lot of weights equipment, a lot of cardio equipment. We're just in the throes of putting a sprint track in it, and which is all helping get people ready for fights. But so we're not a gym. We are definitely an academy. We're just lucky to have such an amazing gym facility, which is growing over the years. We've been able to add to it and grow it, and it's got to quite an impressive standard right now.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I got to say, I wish they had something like that in Cardiff, where I'm from, which did stuff for kids, which is free. Because I a few times over the years, for the three of my boys, I've looked at some sort of MMA training, because I think it'd be good for them. Like the older ones, my oldest one is 14. He's got ADHD, and he plays football. He plays a lot of football because he plays for an academy. But he also, he's got a lot of energy, and I try to make sure that he directs his energy and his focus to the right things. He's at an age where some kids are getting into trouble and doing things, so I'm trying to steer him away from that sort of thing, obviously, as best I can, as all parents do. So I do wish there was something like that in Cardiff, which wasn't super expensive. Unfortunately, as far as I'm aware, there isn't, which is a shame, because I feel like boxing and MMA and martial arts generally can be really good for kids. We're very lucky. Our kids are very, very noisy, but they're generally very well behaved-ish. Sometimes, maybe. But generally, they're all right. But obviously, when I was younger, when I was his age, 14, 15, I was into all sorts. I was not particularly well behaved. And there's all sorts of stuff which my mother didn't know I was doing. And something like that would have really appealed to me. And I feel like at the time, it would have helped me a lot.
Right, yeah.
Wasn't there. But like you say, things have evolved. And I know a friend of mine does a lot of stuff with boxing, similar thing. And he focuses a lot of his time on coaching kids who are, get them off the streets. And how many times do you go to a shop in the evening and you just see groups of kids from any age, from 12 to 16, just hanging around? And their time could be better spent in the gym, doing martial arts, or whatever.
I definitely think, yeah. I mean, there's martial arts are really varied as well. So if one martial art don't suit you, I'm sure something else would, regards being a young lad or a young girl. And I agree. I think their time would be better spent doing some kind of healthy activity that perhaps going to also keep them safe one day. Trouble comes their way, and it keeps you out of trouble. I mean, me and my brother's 4 years older than me, and as sort of like young teenagers, we got into taekwondo, and my brother's a really good guy, lovely guy. But me, when I was growing up, I was a good kid, but I was a little bit more scrappy, perhaps a little bit more hot-headed than my brother. Got in a little bit more trouble than my brother. But we both started up this taekwondo, and I do think it steered me away. It was a good time to come in my life. Definitely taught me respect. I definitely learned to respect my taekwondo instructor. I mean, he was legit good. Not a brash guy to show off how tough he was or anything, but when we used to spar him, he was good, and so I learned to definitely give him the respect that he deserved, and I think that was really healthy for me. And I think some strict parenting in the right way, I think, is good for a child also. I mean, we've all got our own ways of dealing with our children and bringing them up, but I think a bit of hard love is sometimes the best love. I think perhaps some kids ain't getting that in the right way today, and I think we might be seeing trouble in our society today with these young youths because it's been falling apart at the family level.
Yeah, and I think a big part of it, I think a huge problem with this generation. I was actually speaking. I spoke with Lee at the show about like knife crime and stuff. We talked about, but like I think a big part of it is that. So say when I was younger, when I was like 14 or whatever, I got into some trouble. Yeah. But I knew that if my dad found out, I was in big trouble, and I didn't want. So I would do everything I could possibly do to make sure he didn't find out.
Yeah.
But I feel like these days, kids perhaps they don't really care if they get caught because they feel like, well, what are you going to do?
Yeah,
I feel like consequence. It's like no, I don't know if it's discipline or like the punishment, or they kind of.
Yeah.
It's difficult to explain, but I do feel like that's a big part. I agree with something that you said there about that. This is the problem that we're seeing, everywhere now. Is that I feel like every day I read about someone being stabbed or attacked or something, and it's usually by a couple of kids or what I would consider kids.
Yeah.
In some ways, they're nearly adults, and I feel like I read about it every day, man. And
yeah. I mean,
what could have been done to help those kids before they got to that stage?
I mean, I'm sure back many years ago, 30, 40 years ago, they had their stints of crime. But I definitely think it's, in terms of stabbings and stuff, it's definitely up more than it used to be. This could be, partly put down to trends, maybe. But I just think less families are staying together, and it doesn't fare well for the children that are caught up in it, unfortunately. We're all under pressure to work as well. I mean, if families do stay together, predominantly the mum has to go back to work even when they've got a small child. This is time away from parenting, and again, to go back to what we were discussing before, that I was quite old-fashioned in that I would have my ex, as she was, as she is now. I wanted her to be at home, so she spent the 15 years that we was together, being able to be a proper, I say proper parent, because you can be a proper parent when you work too. Don't get me wrong, but I want to know that if the kids are sick at school, there's going to be mum to go and pick them up and take them home, and to have her energies about her. Mums must come home tired from even a part-time job. Being a parent is not easy. Really, it's not easy.
Oh, no.
And to think of working as well. I mean, no wonder things are falling apart.
I know what you mean. I mean, when we had our oldest, we did the same. I felt like I wanted my wife to stay home. I didn't want her to have to go to work.
Mm-hmm.
So for the first year, or I think it was about 18 months, maybe
Yeah,
around. I don't even know if we made it that long. Where
right.
we tried it and we wanted it, and it was working well from a point of view of, like the family structure and whatever, but just couldn't financially manage to
Yeah, it's real tough,
live,
really
pay
tough.
rent on just
Yeah,
my wage. So
yeah, yeah,
she had no choice, and
yeah.
as it worked out all right in terms of she got a job where I got a job, and they had a crash and things like that.
Mm.
But beforehand, in my head, I didn't want them to go to a crash and for her to have to work. I wanted to be able to, do it the way that we discussed. But
Mm.
such is life. But
Yes.
yeah, it's weird, isn't it? As a parent, like you worry about your kids no matter what. Even if the world was all fine and dandy and rosy, you'd still worry, wouldn't you? But it's kind of one of those things at the moment where you just. I think one of the things about it as well is the world we live in now is everything's instant. So if something happens in London or
Mm.
Birmingham or Liverpool or wherever, you know about it straight away
Yeah,
on
yeah, of
social media or the
course.
news or the radio or
Yeah.
some form of contact or
Mm.
notification. So you do hear of every bit of sort of every stabbing or every wherever it may be.
Mm. But
Whereas maybe 15, 20 years ago, you might not have
mm,
heard about those things.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah. But I definitely think with this knife crime, I mean, the consequence of potentially using the knife or even just getting caught with a knife on you, it's just not consequential enough. I
no,
mean, it's almost a feather in the cap if they get caught with one because it's like well,
yeah,
hey, I'm the man or however, I don't know. It just doesn't seem consequential enough. And if the parenting ain't there at home, and then it's got to be done with the system, right? Um,
yeah,
but the policing, I mean, we can use London as an example because that's where a lot of the knife crime seems to be happening, or certainly where the attention's falling. They don't do the stop and search now. I think that was Sadiq Khan that brought that in, which I think is just crazy. And also the police numbers have dropped. I mean, of course, crime's going to go up, but also in terms of the law, they've got to start dishing out proper punishment so that these people think twice about even having one on them. Give them proper time, make
yeah.
it
Well,
proper
that's the problem,
consequential.
isn't it? Is because of their age as well. A lot of them are under 18. They don't get a punishment half the time.
Mm.
It's almost like a caution rather
Yeah,
than it should
yeah,
be some sort of jail time. It doesn't have to
yeah.
be just for carrying a knife. I feel like if you carry a knife in the street, and the problem is I think some of these kids are carrying a knife because perhaps where they live is so intimidating, and there's
Mm.
gangs and there's people around, so they feel perhaps like when they're walking about or they're walking home, they feel like
Mm.
they need that
Yeah.
to, for protection as much as bravado and other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think things like martial arts and boxing and people, there's people all around the country like yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and, who work in community centres and youth clubs, and they're
Mm.
doing, volunteers, some of them who are doing so much to try and combat this stuff.
Mm.
And then you've got like the mayor of London or the government reducing police jobs,
Mm.
and it's kind of like I
Mm.
feel like that's a huge part of the problem. Not that I've got any desire to go into politics, but like in terms of like if you're going to
Mm.
cut the amount of police on the streets and available, then of
Mm.
course crime's going to go up. Like
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
just
yeah.
basic common sense, isn't it?
Yeah, I think there's other things as well that, for me personally, I find worrying. And if you hear like in interviews, I mean, I'm using Sadiq Khan as an example because it puts it out there, just on how I feel and the kind of things that I'm hearing. But they're kind of normalizing things a little bit. So, I know one time Sadiq Khan was questioned about the terrorism incidents that are happening in London, and he's kind of like coughing it off as well. That that's what comes
So
along with multiculturalism and that's city life, as if, well, that's just the way it is. I think this is totally not acceptable. That is not the way it should be. It certainly is the way it is, but it just should not be like that. But no, we don't run the country, unfortunately. Other people do that.
It's but yeah, you're right. It's like, why in a civilized country, why should you normalize any kind of crime, any kind of terrorism or whatever it may be? That shouldn't be normal. That shouldn't be okay. That shouldn't be, oh, it's a capital city and that's what it comes with. No, it's not all right. People are dying, people are getting hurt. So what can we do to stop it?
Yeah.
Maybe let's have more police on the street. Let's increase the punishment for carrying a knife. Let's increase the punishment for using a knife, and actually make it that. However, when this came up with Lee, he did make an interesting point, which got me thinking, was that if you increase the punishment for carrying a knife, what you could potentially do is, so say in the situation that I just mentioned, where someone's just carrying a knife because they feel uncomfortable in their surroundings and they know there's gangs, etc. around. If you then they get arrested for carrying a knife and you give them, I don't know, 6 months in a youth offenders institute, what you could potentially do then is you could actually drive them more into going towards crime, because perhaps in that detention center they might sort of become friendly with someone who influences their decisions. They might feel that they need to get involved in a gang to remain safe within the system. So it's like, there's that, I suppose there's that aspect as well. However, when you weigh up, I feel like if you can stop people, kids particularly, thinking that carrying a knife is okay or the way to go or what they need to do, then that's a big part of the problem. And maybe a deterrent. Well, there is no deterrent at the moment, I think, is the biggest issue.
Yeah, well, my answer to what you're saying, what Lee said, is a really good point. And we're probably not in the know enough to know how the best way to go about it in a deeper sense. But if they are going to a detention centre or even indeed to prison if they're older, there's got to be programs in place within those units that educate them, to steer them away from it. I mean, of course you're going to have shady individuals in there, but there's got to be some kind of rehabilitation program to make them, think otherwise, or to give them hope to come out of what they was in before. You've got to dangle some kind of carrot, and don't dangling the carrot of, you could be, you can make a success of your life by doing it the right way. I mean, I don't know. I mean, some individuals are not going to be changed, and they're always going to be bad. Unfortunately, that really is true. You can't do anything about that. But I do think you can help the society as a whole to make it, resonate at a safer level. But it has to be done across a wide spectrum. It isn't just policing. It's not just schooling, not just parenting. It's it's a whole set of things. Yeah, that's what makes it so complicated, so difficult. And but right now I feel like nothing's really being done to address that's clearly a problem. Nothing seems to be changing. Everything seems to take so long in England. That's what it feels like to me.
I really passionately feel like, yes, there's kids or people who are going to be bad and make bad choices, and they're going to go that way no matter what, how much you try and help them, what you try and do, what you try and put in place, whatever it may be. But it's about reaching, again, like I use kids as an example, but it's about reaching those people who can be helped and can be steered in the right direction, or another side of it, or who have got themselves in a situation that they want to get out of, but they can't for whatever reason, whether it's crime or family or whatever. It's about reaching those people, because they're the people who can then try and make change. It's like it kind of spreads, if you get what I mean. The people who, what you find is people who've been helped, particularly if you speak, like I've spoken to a couple of people who will go in a kind of bad way when they were young teenagers, and then they met someone, whether it be a coach or a teacher or a friend or a social worker, someone who steered them in the right direction. And because that person changed their life, they've then gone on to work with kids or to try and do the same.
Yeah.
So I do think there's something toward, to that. But I think, like you say, it's like an overall spectrum of like policing and social services, and
Yeah. I mean, all I know is something's got to be done, and I just don't hear about anything moving forward with it, and that's a little concerning. It just seems to be maybe wait until it gets bad to another degree before someone ever does anything about it. But time will tell. I don't know. I do take a little interest in some of the politics. It all seems to be about Brexit at the minute, but those kind of things are my concern. My son has got a friend that does uni in London, and sometimes my son goes down there on a train and they'll go out drinking that. And I've got to say, it really does worry me. I always say to my son, please be careful. And my son's a real good lad. He's not the kind of person who ever intentionally cause any problems or go where there's potentially any problems as such. But he's got to live his life still, and I get that. So I don't certainly stop him. He's 21 years old. I can't stop him, but it does play on my mind. It really does. And
that must be real stressful every time.
It is.
And then that would stress me out.
Yeah, it's very worrying. It really is. But we can only ever sit and point our opinions on how we think things have been done. It might be a lot more complicated than what we're saying. I'm sure it is. But politics and putting things in place to make things work and move forward seems to just take so long here in England. Very frustrating.
Yeah, definitely. So before we switch to the hands of the people, as it were, and we go through some of the stuff they've sent in, I just wanted to ask you about the obviously you've been very busy weekend with some of your fighters in action.
Super busy. Yeah, it's been crazy. Well, it went very well. So on the Friday, we had a Cage Warriors event in London. We had Tom Mearns making his first fight since having one of the most horrendous injuries that's been seen in the cage. He fought on Bellator. He dislocated his arm. He didn't realise he was competing with an injury, so his arm gave way as a takedown was being attempted, and his arm completely gave out. Truly horrendous injury. And it took quite some rehabilitation. He took some time out from training. And in the meantime, without getting into the midst of what caused it, me and Tom had a falling out. He had a lot of things going on in his life. He had a relationship. He was living with the girl. They split up all during the same period that he had this arm injury. And then we had this falling out. So he was no longer training with us. But, to cut this long story short, it's all gone full circle. He's come back training. He's done a good job with the arm. But he ended up picking up this nasty injury on his ankle, which it all stems from an injury he had years ago where he really broke his leg bad. He broke his ankle really, really bad. So this was something that was plaguing him throughout the camp. He couldn't get his weight off because he couldn't run because his ankle issue. So he was a lot heavier. Even though it was a catch weight, he was still a lot heavier than he should have been to make weight. And so he actually missed weight, even though it was a catch weight fight, which for him to do, there must have really been a problem for him not to make weight. And we knew what it was. It was the road work. He just couldn't run with this ankle. And but he's gone in there. He's fought a really good guy from Ireland, and he managed to pull off a split decision win. It just makes it even more impressive for the fact of everything that he's been through, and really went in there with 1.5 legs. He had no footwork ability. I think had the camp knew that there was an issue, they could have strategized to have beaten Tom. But of course, we tried to disguise it best we could, and we got away with it. And he scraped that win. But next fight, he'll be in much better health, much better position to nail that weight, because that's the first and only time that I've ever known him to miss weight. And that was that in the bag. That was on the Friday. Then on the Saturday, we had 6 fighters fighting on the Battle Arena amateur show. They do have some pro fights on there now, but all the guys that we got on there are amateur. But I think it's pretty much the biggest amateur event now in Europe. I think it is. And we come away with 3 world title wins, 1 national title win. Basically, we won all 7 fights that we had scheduled for the Friday and Saturday. So it's been an absolute awesome weekend. I'm so proud of what everyone's done. And not to forget about the coaching that goes involved. JB Graham, Lee Edwards, that are all based at our gym. Obviously myself being there, Clay Riley helping out. Jordan, who's a known fighter, he helped out in the corner with the title fights as well. I'm just so proud of the way the team functioned and conducted themselves. And every one of the fights was real hard, really high level. Incredible weekend.
Is it more stressful as a coach than when you were sort of building up for your own fights?
Oh man, goodness, it's
just kind of less in control, aren't you?
Yeah, yes, in ways for that. Yeah, I'm not in control, and you care for these kids. You become friends with them. You love them, and you want them to feel the happiness of a win and not the sadness of a loss. You don't want them to get hurt or injured, win, lose or draw. You feel for them in that aspect. So it's a little bit like saying, who'd you love more out of your mum or your dad? You love them for different qualities, right? But you love them the same, but just for different ways. Same for the stress aspect and the anxiety aspect of when I competed, it come with a whole set of different stresses than it does being a coach, but on par, totally on par. It's
cool. Yeah. I mean, Tom Mearns is he's got a lot of ability, and he looks like he could be something quite special. Do you feel like he could go to the very, very top if he, if everything falls in? Obviously, things got to fall into place. And
like I said before, so many things have got to fall into place. He certainly looked into the strategical part of the sport deep enough. He's always trying to address the technical aspects enough. He's naturally a strong guy, but he, keeps working on his strength to be even stronger. He's got a lot of the qualities to take him all the way, and he listens as a student. I mean, what's hard for these youngsters, in particular for Tom, he works a physical job. That makes it kind of hard, to come to training feeling like you really want to put that hard session in, but he always knuckles down and gets it done, and I respect that. Don't be surprised to see him hit it big. I mean, he's working on Cage Warriors. I think that's where he's going to be staying for now, but I think there could be bigger things coming from him, and you could be seeing him on the Bellator or UFC in the coming years. Yeah, why not? But we got other fighters touting to do the same. I mean, Jordan's fighting the same weight. I was going to say about that's going to be interesting. Yeah, I mean, Jordan's another standout featherweight, and they're both on the Cage Warriors right now. So we'll have to worry about that when it comes to it. If they both end up becoming 1 and 2 contenders for the spot, or one of them gets it, and we'll discuss it. We'll sort it all out.
Sorry, what was Jordan's surname?
Oh, I don't know whether I'm saying this right. Vovnik. I think I'm saying that name. Very, very, very good featherweight. He's a definite talent. Very different personality to Tom. A totally different physique from Tom. A different skill set from Tom. Tom's a gritter and a grinder. Jordan's more of a technician. A pretty boy. Mm-hmm. Tom's ugly as hell. He's a typical fighter. You'd probably look at Jordan's face and wouldn't know he's a fighter. But you look at Tom's and know he's been in those scraps. But yeah, I mean, they bring total different aspects to the table. They do, but they make great training partners because of that.
Yeah, it's so if people wanted to catch the Cage Warriors fights from Friday, where can they find them on like a streaming service or the internet or TV?
I think they do get released. I mean, I think it was on some kind of pay-per-view, maybe. I actually don't know about these things too much. I'm so caught up with it.
I'll have
So
a look. And
yeah, I mean, the fights will be accessible at some point. Yeah, without a doubt. It's a good one to watch. Tom's always good to watch.
So was that the Cage Warriors Unplugged? Was it Cage
Yeah.
Warriors Unplugged? The name of the event?
It was a really, let's say, strange event. It was very different from other Cage Warriors event in that it was like an invite-only thing, and it had a real feeling like, where they do the UFC contenders, and there's not so many people there.
Yeah.
It feels like people have all come to watch you in a gym. It had that feeling.
Okay.
It's done in a studio, and I thought it actually worked out quite well. Yeah, I think I felt like there wasn't so much jeering or shouting from the crowd, so you could kind of concentrate a little bit more. I thought it was nice for me because I could get my instruction out there to Tom really easy because it weren't too noisy, and so for that aspect, I really enjoyed it. But I also do enjoy the ones where are really loud because it's great atmosphere, right? And I'm all for that as well. But yeah, I really enjoyed that Cage Warriors. I think they have got other ones planned to be like that, and I think that's great to put into the mix.
Yeah, I'm always open to try new things, try different things, see what works, see what doesn't.
Yeah, Bellator did something really different, didn't they? A couple of years ago, they did a cage event and a ring event all in one show, and I thought that worked out. I thought, how the hell is that going to work? But I think they pulled it off really well. And again, dare to be different, I think is a good thing.
Yeah, I used to be that I would watch Cage Warriors and I would watch UFC. And I would never really watch Bellator, but over the last year or so, I've slowly started to watch more and more Bellator. I feel like over the last couple of years, they've just changed slightly. I feel like before they were trying to be the same as UFC, and they can't. And then all that happens is they come across as like UFC light, rather than be their own product with their own fighters and their own style of doing things.
Sure.
And I feel like by developing their own style and stuff, it becomes more interesting to me rather than just trying to copy someone else. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I mean, this is just a feeling, whether it's factually true, but did seem to me that Bellator were putting on fights with those older fighters that you never got to meet, and they get them to get it on. They're past their prime slightly, but they do get the fights to happen that you never got to see when they was in UFC, when perhaps they should have faced when they was in their prime. And so for that part of Bellator, I kind of liked it that they did that. And I like that they can give these guys that are touching their 40s or slightly over their 40s, they're able to still get in there, and they give them the appropriate matchup to fight someone similar age to themselves. I think that's great, because they can still do it, but they certainly can't keep up the people in their mid-20s to mid-30s. But
so you know what fight they must be doing next, then, don't you? Danny Batten versus Remedios.
I'll tell you for why that can't happen. I mean, I'll be really happy for that to happen. I don't think it'd be so happy. It's for the fact that I'm so much bigger now, and which is kind of like flip side of how it was when I first knew about Lee. When I first knew about Lee, he was really, he built himself up physically. He's not the tallest dude, but he was built like a pit bull. And I was really tall, skinny, and lean. And I think he was around about 75 kilos back then. A lot bigger than he is now. And I was walking around at a real slim 64, 65 kilos. So, I mean, that I'd have to chop off some limbs to make a weight that be suitable for him. Because I think, he walks around about, his mid-60s now or something like that. I mean, I went away on holiday and I come back at 92 kilos. There's no way that could possibly happen. No way that it could happen where it'd be fair anyway.
So, all right.
Yeah, I mean, that's a dumb thing. Something I wished had happened, was on the cards to happen, but as we all know about the whole injury thing, it never happened. No.
Yeah, these things happen, don't they? So, okay, let's get into some of the questions that the people have sent.
Yes.
They're mainly MMA. I think there was a couple towards the end which are not. I've tried to group them all together, but
okay.
So the first one was, is it nerve-wracking when you go into your first professional fight, and how did you control the nervous energy?
Right. Yeah, of course it's nerve-wracking. I think I think you would have to have something wrong with you not to be nervous, right? But it's how you deal with those nerves. It's totally how you deal with it. And I began to get myself into almost like a ritual state. I would have a little routine that I would do on the morning of the fight, and I would kind of create a personality of showing absolute nothing. And if you see the way I'd walk over to my opponent just before we square off and touch gloves and go back and fight, I would show nothing. I'm there like a robot to do a job, and to do it the best I can. So think of any kind of robotic thing, like look at AI regards chess. It focuses all its energy in chess. It can't do anything else other than. I kind of created that within myself, to become kind of emotionless. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was all under the surface there. It was all going on. But I didn't want to give my opponent an inkling or whether I was angry, hurting, tired, any of those things. I wanted to show nothing. Because my kind of thoughts on it is, look at someone like Theodore. He'd never get in your face. He would never look timid. He showed nothing. And I think sometimes for the human mind, not knowing what you're up against can be more fearful than someone perhaps creating that fight in you by getting in your face. I didn't want no one getting instinctual and being able to respond just because I was trying to aggravate them. I wanted them to become really conscious that they was going to be in competition with me. Yeah, that's how I dealt with it.
You see some fighters, like they really turn it up and they get themselves hyped up with the music and the entrance, and you can see that they're visibly hyped. And then you've got others who are quite cool, calm, collected. And then you've got others who you can see are quite nervous, but they kind of don't really show it outwardly.
Sure.
What would be your preference when you speak to like the guys that you coach? Do you encourage them to do either, or do you just say whatever's best for them?
Sure. Each fight is different, and I think this is why it's so important for a coach to really get to know their fighters, and that's how they become mates initially. I mean, there's some that I don't get on well with, as in have as much in common. It's all business ended, but you've really got to know them, and how I will talk and prepare one person will be vastly different from another. You've got to personalize it. If you look at someone like Nick Hayes, who's turning out to be a really good amateur, and I'm sure is going to have a really good professional career. This guy gets himself worked right up, and that's become his thing. And I'll let him do that if that's what he wants. He wants to be smacked time and time again in the face just before going in. I can't do it to him, so I'll leave it for the other coaches. I mean, that was nothing that would interest me. I didn't want to get smacked around the face before getting it, but he needs it. He wants it. And then you got other ones that are not like that at all. They like things to be calm. They want you to be cool. They don't want to see that you're worked up and getting excited yourself. They want to go in there focused and ready to do the job. Everyone's different.
Yeah, because I remember watching Paddy Pimblett fight when he was on the Liverpool card, when obviously he's from Liverpool, and the crowd was so loud, and you could see before the fight he was so like just buzzing and just taking it in, and he was so hyped.
And he's a good competitor.
I remember thinking it.
Yeah, he's a great competitor. He's a good competitor. He's up for it. He wants it. Yeah, he's a good performer.
Yeah, I feel like he was. I think if he hadn't lost his title when he did, I feel like that was his time to go to UFC. And I feel like maybe because he lost the featherweight title, that kind of might have gotten back a step. Because I don't know, just from stuff I read and heard on podcasts and radio, it felt like he was about to make the jump, and then obviously he had that shock loss. One of the questions actually someone asked is about Paddy. They say, do you think he'll make it in the UFC? And do you think that the UFC should sign him now or wait until he's a bit older? Because obviously he's still early 20s.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say he come into it very, very young. and indeed got a lot of experience for his age. I definitely think he's talented enough to go to UFC, but I don't know what stage he's at regards his camp and how things are settled and how smooth things are running. In fact, I don't know if he's been that active, has he, in the last number of years?
Yeah, he's had an injury actually for
Yeah.
the last.
So for that point, I would perhaps say, not right here and now. Perhaps just get another couple of fights, get back his groove, get back the feeling in the cage, but it's certainly a prospect to go to UFC without a shadow of a doubt. In fact, Tom Mearns, I think, not called him out, but suggested that would be a fight that would really excite him. He would go up a weight to 70 kilos to fight him. He admires Paddy Pimblett. He thinks he's a real tough opposition, but that's kind of things that get Tom going. So, but Tom did say, he knows that he's a real big name, more experienced than Tom, and Tom knows he might have to pay his dues in terms of getting in there more, getting some more substantial wins, perhaps for Paddy to want to take the fight. But that would be a great fight for the future. But maybe if Paddy, perhaps fights a couple of more times, he'd be heading to that UFC. Why not? Certainly good enough to, I think.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of his. He kind of got me into Cage Warriors.
Right.
I think I'd watched it must have been I must have watched something, whether it be football or UFC. I think it was UFC London, but Cage Warriors was on straight after, and I saw this kid from Liverpool, and he won his fight comfortably, which I watched then. And his personality, I just found it really entertaining and interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely different. Confident, definitely different.
Yeah. I think you need that as well.
And if I was lucky to have hair on my head, I wouldn't have it like he has his. But
see, I like it. It's got that like Oasis cut type thing.
Yeah.
He, funny enough, I tweeted him a while back, about a month ago, as a bit of a long shot, and said, "Fans coming on the podcast." And he messaged me straight back and said, "Yeah, definitely. I just don't know when." So we've been trying to sort out a date since then. Just every couple of days, he'll send me a DM. So I'm still working on it. And I'm hoping that I'll get him on soon.
Yeah, that'd be a good one.
Paddy, if you see this, come on.
Yeah, that'd be good to have him on. I'll definitely be curious to listen and to learn more about him, because I only just see little bits regards the interviews that he does after the fight. So I haven't had the privilege, to meet him in person. But if I was to, I'd love to exchange some words and some dialect with him and get to know him a little bit better.
It's one of my favorite things of doing these podcasts is like speaking to people like yourself, or like footballers, and I've been really lucky that I've spoken to some great people from all walks of life, all professions, all sports, and actors and doctors, and I find it really interesting to talk to them about not just the stuff that they're interested in, or their profession, or what they're good at, but also talk to them about other stuff and hear their views. Because like if I speak to, say, a footballer, they've done a million interviews about football, their career, and this, whereas they haven't talked about something completely off, knife crime, or they haven't talked about a different fighter away from themselves, or just something a bit different. People a bit better, and sometimes people get pigeonholed as a fighter or a footballer or an actor or whatever, and that's all they can talk about, and that's all they know. Whereas quite often people have got plenty to say about everything else. I say all that, and I'm going to ask you some more MMA questions.
But we've been off the topic of MMA. We've only just gone on it, right? So
it's all good. Sorry, it's good. Isn't it? So if you had to pick like one British fighter who you think is like a future world champion in the UFC, and you had to pick one, and your life depended on it, who would you pick?
Right now, because some of my other fighters that I think we're going to have one in our gym eventually, and some of the young lads, it's very early to say, but there's a lot of prospects. I've already mentioned them, Jordan. There's some other amateurs that are going to come big on the pro scene, like the Albanian lad Nude, fantastic. So some of the guys that won this weekend, they're going to be incredible pros, and they could go along. But thinking in terms of professional fighters that I've been exposed to is Modestus, who just recently won the Cage Warriors light heavyweight title. Someone that's totally underestimated. This kid is young. He's got a very supportive family behind him. His dad's a fantastic striker in his own right, a great martial artist in his own right, and not insecure enough to send him to other places to go and learn, which is a big thing about our club. I always say to my fighters, get exposure to other clubs and coaches, and I do advise them where I think they should go, but they're always free to go and experience whoever and whatever they want, whenever they want. If they've got the money and the time, the energy and means to do so, go ahead and do it. But Destas is one of those characters. He's very respectful. He will always give a shout out for a club, to show that he represents us as well as his own team. But this kid's got it. He's fit, strong. He's got a good outlook on the competition. He's a good guy. If I think anyone's going to make it, he could make it. And I think that's a nice open division as well, that light heavyweight. I think it's very, very possible for him to make big waves in the UFC.
Cool. I'll definitely be looking out for him.
Yeah.
I'm like I said to you, I already sort of Tom Mearns caught my eye.
Yeah.
So I'll be keeping. I'll make a note of all these names, and I'll be keeping.
That's definitely one for. He's great to watch. I mean, light heavyweights are normally a little slow. This kid's fast. He's got flamboyant kicks, and people, they try and take him down. They think he ain't got a ground game. When he first come to us, didn't have much of a ground game, but this kid's learnt quick already as a super handful, and his wrestling's getting pretty damn good as well. I mean, the last guy he fought was a former wrestling world champion. And he did everything as we said it would go, and eventually the guy was struggling to get him down. It led to the guy's demise. So this kid's going to make big waves for sure.
Cool. So someone else asked, when is too much for Dana White in regards to Conor McGregor, and he just cuts ties, or is he just too valuable and thus untouchable?
Oh, there's no. I don't think you're ever too valuable or untouchable. I don't think that's ever the case, especially with Dana White. If it suits Dana White, he'll go with it. If it doesn't, he won't. I mean, not all the times I've agreed with Dana White, but who's to say I'm right as well? But like when he didn't have Ben Askren in for such a long time, I think that was a shame. And when he got rid of Paul Daly, for something like. It was such a small. I mean, there's been worse things happen, and people have still carried on fighting. I think it was really harsh on him. But no, I think if it suits Dana White and he thinks it's good for UFC, he'll do it no matter what. But of course, there are lines we could all cross, right? Who knows what Dana White? So he's a rule to himself. He's a strong-minded individual, and I'm sure when he makes a decision, everyone will know about it.
Yeah. Would you book? Obviously, Khabib beat Poirier on the weekend.
Yeah, did
convincingly.
Yeah.
Would you book Conor Khabib rematch?
Not now.
Do you think?
What's the name of the other guy?
Beat him?
Well, and then he given. Look, I think Conor's proved that if he lands his shots, he's going to put you away. He's just got to land his shots. But the difficulty with Khabib is, he's so good at smothering people to land shots in on him. Khabib has looked vulnerable at times. A little bit with Poirier. He got ran back a little bit, but no one's been able to stick enough on him. So you can never write Conor McGregor off. I do think to a little point, people have found some weaknesses in Conor's game. We know his cardio seems a little questionable at times. We know that on the ground he's showing some weakness, but I'm sure he's doing things to try to adjust to make that not an issue. But I still think that's going to be the go-to for people who fight against someone like Conor. That's all right. My take on that.
Yeah, I think the one thing about the Conor Khabib match was I felt like Conor became so worried about Khabib's, taking him down and just mauling him like he does.
Yeah.
He didn't do the things that had got him to the dance. He wasn't
I don't know.
wasn't
I don't.
changing the angles.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I don't entirely agree, and I'll tell you for why. Conor McGregor went, wholeheartedly into boxing to prepare for the Mayweather fight, and you've got to respect Conor for this. He went into a really different format from what he's known for. I know he's boxed, but he went in against an absolute legend, someone who's never lost before, and I think he actually performed pretty well considering.
Yeah.
I think he got more touches on him than some real class boxers that Mayweather's fought before. He really got some hands on, and I think he made Mayweather not look very good in the first 3 rounds. I think he really got into Mayweather's head, and in the big scheme, he done very, very well. A lot better than if it was in Conor's arena. I think they could have made that boxing match a lot more interesting, such as doing it in the cage, doing it with MMA gloves, and at least easing it up so it was all on Mayweather, all on the way that he wanted to win. Conor was always going to do it because it was going to set him up for life financially, and it was great viewing, right? I mean, I went to one of the where they face off with each other and they talk each other down. I mean, it was superb. It was really good attention. I'm glad it happened. So look, we got to respect him. He did that. He fought boxing against an unbeaten guy, and then he comes back after taking some considerable time out of MMA and goes straight against another unbeaten guy. And you've got to respect that. I mean, and I think he was maybe a little bit rusty. And I think that's why you didn't see perhaps the Conor McGregor that we hoped to see with that fight.
Yeah, maybe he should have had not a tune-up fight because you can lose any fight, but like he should have perhaps had a fight before and fights could be.
Possibly so, but that's just not his way, though, is it? He wants the big ones. He's got so much belief in himself. Yeah.
Yeah, in terms of the rematch, I'd like to see Khabib face someone like Cerrone or have another fight, and if he comes out of that, because obviously he's he lost to Khabib convincingly. So I feel like if he
no, I think the match. Oh, I'm trying to think of the name of the guy. I'm really bad with names. And maybe this is all the times I've been hit around the head that makes me this way. But what's the name of the other guy? Tall, skinny. What's his name?
Ferguson.
Tony Ferguson. I know that Ferguson. They had this match up lined up, and he had the injuries, but they got to get that match on. I think Ferguson's the only one right now that's got the most chance of beating him out of everybody. He can wrestle, he can strike, he can match his cardio, and I think even if Khabib did get him down, is he going to keep him down? Is he going to stop all these submissions? And this guy's got some serious energy about him. I would love to see that fight.
Yeah, I want to see.
Much more than
crazy as well.
Yeah, I think it would be disgustful for him. It's crazy. Come on, we all want to see that fight, right? I think so anyway.
The people Ferguson deserves that fight as well. Totally. He's been waiting patiently in line long enough.
Yeah. So let's hope that one happens.
Yeah, and then if Conor wins his fight, you've got that. Winner of Ferguson could be perfectly set up.
Yeah, I mean, Conor ain't won for a number of years now, has he? So let's get him back on winning ways, and then let's look at it. That's how I would suggest it anyway. But it's down to Dana. I don't know what it's going to call it.
The way money is, I suppose.
Absolutely.
But there we go. So what is the craziest thing you've ever seen in your years as a fighter?
Yeah. Well, and there's a few things that stand out because they're vastly different. I can't remember the name of this fighter, but he wins his fight. He jumps up and he's on the cage, really celebrating. And then he stands up on the cage and does a flip, and he lands with his legs locked out straight and completely destroys his knee. And I can't think of the name of the fighter, but we was all astounded that he did it. And of course, he had to get carted off. I mean, that was a bit of a shock. He had this amazing win, and it probably knocked his career out for a few years because he totally done his knee in. That was quite something. I'd have to mention Tom Mearns again because of his arm. That's another close call because of the horrendousness of the injury. And other than that, it's going to fall on those nasty leg breaks that we've seen with. And I mean, that's just horrendous. They're the kind of things that stand out to me.
Yeah, one of the most distressing ones was the I can't remember his name, Anderson Silva one. That was horrific. I remember watching that, and just it goes like, and he doesn't realize for a second, and he steps back onto it.
That's it.
And it's not there.
And I've actually seen it happen before on Cage Rage many years ago. And somebody Pettifer, was it Ross Pettifer? I can't remember his first name. Some guy goes and kicks him, and he shin blocks him, and it's the first leg break I'd ever seen. So it happened many years ago that I'd seen that. You know, they're the kind of things that really stand out. Unfortunately, injuries, horrendous injuries. Double knockouts, I've seen them too. You know, I've seen those.
Yeah, they're rare, aren't they? But
they're rare. I've seen them.
Amazing to see.
On the old Millennium Brawls that happened. Both knocked each other out one punch.
It's mad, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Really strange thing. What's your favourite place to fight or favourite country to fight in?
Well, I think I enjoyed Vegas. I really enjoyed it. It was great to walk around and see all the different hotels. You know, I've got a bit of a funny sleep pattern, so sometimes I don't sleep much at night, or I'll go to bed early and I wake up crazy early in the middle of the night, if you will. And you go walking around in the street, it's buzzing all the time. It's quite an intriguing place. I really enjoyed my experience there. Yeah, it was a good time. I had good memories, not only because I won, but you know, because of the actual place itself. I really would like to go back there again to experience the place without the stress of knowing I had to fight. I'd like to go and really indulge in it.
Yeah, my bucket list of top 3 places to go is Japan, Vegas, and
I enjoyed Japan. Japan's good. I've been to Tokyo, I think 3 times. Definitely an interesting place. Interesting people. Didn't all enjoy competing out there, but so amazing place.
Yeah, the whole culture and just everything kind of just interests me. I'd love to go there just for a couple of weeks, just take it all in.
If you go out there, try the sushi. It doesn't look very nice because your stomach tells you I don't want to eat raw fish. But once you get over that hurdle and try it, I really enjoyed it. If I do go to another country, I'll try some of their cuisine as they would have it.
Yeah, you've got to take in the local cuisine and kind of, you know, try and see and do things the way they do, isn't it?
Yeah,
I always got to do that.
Yeah, of course.
No matter how hard it is. So last couple of questions then. What we got? Johnny Wishbone wants to know the biggest dickhead in the fight game.
Today or ever? Oh, that's correct.
Ever, I suppose.
That's a hard one. Crikey, that's kind of got me stumped. I mean, back along, I would have said Lee Remedios. Because we really wanted some of each other back in the day. But he's certainly, you know, he's not a dickhead. I've got a lot of respect for Lee. He's still, you know, competing on a circuit of sorts regards his grappling. But yeah, I mean, I've had those thoughts about him at times, but you know, that's all in the past now. And you know what? Nothing else really comes to mind. I'm sure there are a lot of dickheads out there, but nothing comes to mind. My experiences with the MMA world as a whole has been a really positive one. Hence, I'm still involved with it, and until then, that will continue to be the case.
Cool.
Yeah.
Has anyone ever offered you money to throw a fight? It's an interesting one.
Never ever.
Yeah, no. It's not something it's not something you'd associate with MMA. I don't think so much. Like not so much. Over the years, you hear about boxing, don't you? But
I think it's liable to happen where the money is really, really big. I think it's more likely to happen in boxing because the money's so huge. But in MMA, no, it's just less likely. It's not going to happen. The thing I love about MMA, over the way boxing has come, you can have a UFC champion, a Bellator champion, but at some point they're probably going to end up facing each other. They're not afraid to put it on the line. And I like that about the MMA community. And I hope it never goes down the route of the way boxing did, where you really want to see two boxers getting on, but they're world champions of different promotions. And if they do get to face each other, it's when they're long past their best. And I think that's so sad, because I think in boxing there was potential matches that could have been absolutely amazing. But that ain't the case in MMA, and I'm glad about that.
Do you think we'll ever see like a Bellator versus UFC like event type thing? Where they do like champion versus champion co-promotion.
I would love that to happen. I think we all would love that to happen. And I like to keep my mind open enough for my hopes that anything is possible. But I don't think any one promotion will really put that on the line, because it's kind of trying to establish which one has got the best fighters and which one's the best promotion. And as a business, as a company, they ain't going to do that. I can't see it will ever really happen.
Yeah, it's almost like one of those things. It's like never say never, but
yeah,
as a business decision, I guess you got to weigh up like the amount of money that you'll make from the fight, but versus if your fighter gets KO'd in under a minute, what's the damage to the company? I suppose.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't think that's going to happen.
Love to see it.
Yeah.
Okay. That's an interesting one. Okay, we'll have that one. So Peaches asks or says, Danny claims to be unbeaten, but didn't he suffer a TKO loss to Ricky Salhan?
Right, yeah. I wasn't unbeaten. I had my losses. I was unbeaten in any title fight. So I fought for a European title where I beat Lucas Lazzarini, I beat John Kavanagh, and all my title fights I had under Cage Warriors. I was unbeaten in all my titles. I retained them all, I kept them all. That was the case. So I certainly had my losses. You can just see that on my fight record. Actually, with that Ricky Salhan fight, what was interesting about that, I thought he was managed by the promoter at the time, Angie Jardine. And in that fight, there was approximately 7 fouls. Now, I'm not the one to pick. I don't care that there's a loss on my record. I'm afraid to lose. But this guy elbowed me in the spine during the takedown. He's a striker, and he didn't want to go on the ground with me for obvious reasons. I was getting known for my ground, although I consider myself a striker too. But I was going to take it where I knew he weren't very good. And I had him up against the ropes. It was done in a ring. And when I tried to take his legs away, he would hold on with his arm. And the referee was a guy called Fred Ratto, who was a training partner of him. So, of course, Lee Asdell, my cornerman, would say, hey, Fred, look, the arm. So he'd take his arm off, and I'd go to the upper body to try to pull his upper body away. But then he'd put his foot on the lower rope, so I couldn't pull him out and take him down away from the rope. So there's all these things going on. And during one of the takedowns, when I got him round both of the legs and just about to take him down, he elbowed a direct hit down to the spine, which stopped the fight for a while. I had to recover from that. And the fight actually ended with an illegal strike. So, you're not allowed to do soccer kicks. Well, I was down on the ground. He'd done a head stomp. So he got a warning. I got up, I shot in. I tried to take him down. And I'm on my knees, and I received another head kick. And Fred Rodo, the referee, waved off the fight and put Ricky's hands up. It was a bit of a mess. Now, I need to look back at the footage. And Andy Jardine said, hey, I'll look back at the footage. If there's more than 3 fouls, I think he said, we'll do it as a no contest. But they never looked at the footage. But I would really like to look at it. But it was a very dirty fight from what I remember. But do I care? No, I don't. Because I went on and done so much more with my career.
Yeah.
It didn't hamper my career at all. It's a good talking point as an experience. It would certainly never happen today. But it did happen then. But that's, what can I do?
Thing is, there's a reason in there that soccer kicks and head stomps are illegal.
Yeah. I mean,
and
I
there's
don't
downed
mind.
opponent.
I would take a fight where you can do those. It really doesn't bother me. I mean, I would have even done a complete bare knuckle fight. I was just up for those sort of things back then. But to get a loss under those circumstances was a little bit, it leaves a bit of a bad taste in your mouth. But
Yeah.
I'm not someone to dwindle about the past. What happened happened. I don't care. I really don't care. He was not. I fought many and beat many much better opponents than him. He's certainly a talented kid, though. I think he ended up doing time inside, which is a shame because he could have perhaps had a career in it.
It's good talking point, though, isn't it? Like to look back on, and like that's quite a mad, like like a fight, and just I wonder if that's. So with that, do you reckon you'd be able to like find that on YouTube or something like that, or would that unlikely?
I know you not as far as I'm aware, and I don't think Andrew Jardine would want to have that fight put up because of the amount of fouls.
That bad, is it?
Yeah, it was not good. I mean, our argument was, Leasdall jumped straight in and said, "Why are you stopping the fight?" He goes, "Oh, your man's concussed." He goes, "But it was an illegal strike, so surely he gets disqualified." And but the argument went nowhere. And again, the difficulty was Fred Reddo was training with Andrew Jardine, the promoter, training with Ricky Sohan, and they're all kind of buddies, I guess. And yeah, what happened happened.
Oh, gee.
I'm not bitter. I'm not bitter about it. I'll only ever talk about it if it gets brought up. But I just thought podcast. That's how it seemed to me. I was getting multiple fouls. He was holding onto the ropes. It was a horrible affair. It was not good. I remember my dad was in the audience, and my dad was disgusted with it. And he goes, "Promise me, Dan, you'll never fight that guy on that promotion again." And I said, "No, I won't do that," because he had no care for my well-being. Hitting me in the back of the spine was. It's just distasteful, isn't it? I mean, I think there has to be respect for each other as fighters. I mean, we're trying to knock each other out and everything, and the sport's potentially dangerous anyway. But to do things that are really potentially damaging are doing that. I know we were discussing before. You've had issues with your back. You know about that. Hitting someone in the spine like that. There's a reason why that's an illegal strike. But he took that to no regard. There you go.
Yeah. And on another day, those stomps to the head, those elbows to the spine, they can do some serious damage.
Yeah. That's not good.
Like life altering damage. You get
potentially there.
But MMA is dangerous enough, and if you get, you can break bones, you can get concussions, and knowing what we know now about concussions and things like that. I'm not saying that the blows that he did to you, risked doing that necessarily in the velocity that he did them, say. But, if he'd caught you wrong or in a way, he could have. And it could have been, very dangerous.
On a good part of it, we always mentioned Lee Ramirez a few times. Lee Ramirez fought him a number of years later. And put a good number on him. I enjoyed watching it. So well done for Lee for doing that.
Yeah, I'm happy to hear that because but that's not the way to go about things in my book.
No.
Okay, so just to finish off, mate, if you're all right, just a couple more minutes. Just a couple of kind of non-MMA questions.
Yeah.
Just from some people. So it says, I say non-MMA questions, and then the first one. What's easier to master, Taekwondo or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?
I'd say the grappling arts. The grappling arts are easier to master. And I told you before, because they're touch orientated. When you're learning any striking system, you've got to take into account someone's footwork. You've got to take into account someone's, speed of strike, their muscle type, whether they're fast twitch, slow twitch. And as a fight progresses with the striking, you've got to take into account exertion. Now, don't get me wrong, you have to take these things into account with guards being exerted with BJJ. But, learning it as an art, it's easier because of it's the touch thing. An armbar's got to be done pretty much a certain way, no matter what the position. A leg lock's got to be done a certain way, okay, with slight modifications of position. A guillotine a certain way, position pins a certain way. The principles are really easy. To me, when you're grappling, it's like pieces of puzzles connecting. And I think that's an easier thing, surely, than this disconnected art of striking. Striking is something that's not, I think it takes longer to become really good at it. It takes a lot longer.
Yeah. What do you think is the like the hardest martial art to master overall?
For me personally, I trained judo on and off, and that was actually really hard for me. Very, very difficult. To try and throw someone so clean, and by the same token, trying to stop them throwing you. I think that those takedown arts are really, really hard. Wrestling as well is so physically exerting. I think both judo and wrestling are the most exhausting physical aspects of the martial arts. Really tiring. So you've got to have your technique down, you've got to have your fitness up, and you've got to be feeling in good health to do them.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
And last two questions. AJ Wilder or Fury? Who's the best fighter?
Fury.
Spot on.
Personally,
exactly
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you think Joshua will beat what's his name? I forget his name. Do you think he'll win his rematch next time now?
I'm not actually sure he will.
It's a big
I'm
fight
gonna say,
for him, isn't it?
I'm gonna say no.
I just wonder whether it's got into his head a bit.
Yeah, and I think he's showing a little bit of weakness. I mean, this is a personal view. I've watched him fight a few times, and when the pace goes up, he seems to take a little while to recover from the exertion from it. And I used to see this a little bit with Frank Bruno back in the day. He was always a little bit slow. He's very, very muscular bound, and I think unless he's going at a pace that he wants to go and he's able to keep at the ends of his techniques, I think when someone roughs it up and he has a little spurt back, he seems to look tired. And I think people are trying to push to get him into deep water quite quickly. But we should see. Time will tell.
Yeah, I do feel a bit like people have bought into the hype a bit, because I watched the Klitschko fight, and in the middle rounds, he very nearly lost it.
Yes, I agree.
He did well. He did, don't get me wrong, his mentality to come back from that and then go on and win the fight and stop Klitschko. It's amazing. Not many people have done that.
Oh.
But I think people remember the win and they forget how vulnerable he looked in those middle rounds.
My take on that is you've got to be consensual about that fight. How old was Klitschko at the time? Like 41, 42 years old?
On his way out.
Probably a decade out of his prime. And how old was AJ at the time? I don't think he would have been doing that to a 7-year junior Klitschko. I really don't.
No.
Yeah, I think age got the better. I think that was the factor in it, rather than who was the better fighter per se.
Yeah, and I think Fury, now that if Fury's got his mind right and he's in good shape, I think he beats both of them, because he's a superior boxer.
Yes, definitely. I think
all about his, if he's where he needs to be mentally and physically. Final question: why aren't you on Twitter?
Okay. Well, look, I'll be 46 soon, so I'm a slightly older guy. And as much as I like to think that I'm staying hip and young, some of the electronical online things I struggle with. Now, I've got the hang of Facebook, and my son kept saying to me, "Dad, you really need an Instagram. You really need an Instagram." I'm like, "Son, I have enough with my Facebook. I don't really have time. I've got my normal messaging going off. I've got messages on my Facebook. I've got WhatsApp messages going off. The last thing I want to do is having Twitter. I don't even 100% know what Twitter's all about. I don't know whether it's the same as Facebook or not. I really haven't dived into it or delved into it. But I've got Instagram, but my son runs it. So I don't actually have any part of it. He just says, can you send us over some pictures of your activities and write a little caption and I'll put it up for you. And that's how we work that. But yeah, I don't know. What would Twitter bring to me? I'm not too sure how beneficial it would really be to me.
Yeah, I feel like that sometimes. I gotta say,
Yeah.
it's sometimes it can be the very worst of people, but then there is some benefits to it, I guess. That it's not all bad, but
Yeah.
fortunately, the things which catch your eye, the people at their worst.
Right.
Sometimes funny, sometimes just not
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
Not a
I mean,
massive fan of social media. But
I hear things about it, but but not much. And I don't really hear. A big part of my social life is around the gym with all these youngsters. I don't really hear them. Oh, so and so put this on Twitter. Oh, I don't really hear much of it. I don't know whether Twitter's really that big a thing. It certainly doesn't have any bearing on my life, and I don't see how it's going to benefit my life by being on it. I'm happy with Facebook. I'm happy with my son running my Instagram, and that's good enough for me right now. As and when it might be important for me to go on it, I'll do so. But no one's really ever even said to me that I should be on there, to be fair.
there we go. That's
Yeah.
that question answered. Done and dusted.
Yes.
Danny, thank you for joining me, mate. I really
Tom,
appreciate you finding the time, staying up late on a Sunday night.
Yeah, not a problem for me.
You can visit the BST Academy website. Is www.bstacademy.co.uk.
Yeah.
With all the information about Danny's Academy. You can catch all our shows.
Incredible place. People have got to go and see it. It's an incredible facility, really is. And we're open to all fighters, no matter what you camp. You come along, we'll teach you, we'll train with you, and it'll all be done in the nicest of ways. Very, very open place for fighters as well as open to the regular public as well. Must experience it though. I can't tell you enough.
I've been looking at just the photos and stuff of it on the website, and it just looks awesome.
Yeah.
In every way, it just looks it's modern and up to date. It's got all the equipment you need as fighters, and also, like you say, for people starting out or kids. Or
I'm telling you, this academy has got everything in it that it needs to either accommodate a top UFC guy, a UFC champion, regardless if they want to be over here to do some of their training before they fight in UFC, if it's held in the UK. Not only could it accommodate them, it's also can accommodate someone to progress up to that level. I really think we got the coaches. I really think we got the facility to get someone to go up to the highest level that you can get at. I really do think that's going to happen. Watch this space.
Great stuff. And like you said earlier, a couple of potential UFC champions in the mist as well.
Yeah, so I mean, too many to mention. I mean, there's many a fighter that I've not got to mention, although that's not a big deal. That I'm sure they'll be getting spoken about in the near future at some point anyway.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So, guys, you can find all our shows on in video format at youtube.com/AcePodcastNation and audio at all the usual podcasting platforms, catchers, etc. Follow us on Twitter at acecast_nation and facebook.com/acecastnation. Let us know what you thought of the show. Let us know who you'd like to see on the next show, which series is your favorite, and as always, catch us every Wednesday for the Andy Campbell Championship show, and you can send questions in to Andy, former professional footballer for Cardiff City and Middlesbrough, and Premier League footballer. Ask him anything you want. In the meantime, I will see you all next time. Thank you, Danny, again. Cheers for coming on, mate.
Awesome. Really enjoyed it.
Very good. Me too. I loved it. And guys, we'll see you next episode. Cheers.